Good Tuesday morning, friends. It is 10:18. I'm meteorologist Ashley Brew. As we are tracking the tropics, we now have major Hurricane Delta, which is a Cat 3 hurricane in the Caribbean, and it is forecast to take aim at the Yucatan. So Cancun, areas near Cozumel as well, the Yucatan Channel. Forecast to make landfall possibly as a Cat 4. Would not be surprised to see if it tries to take aim as a Cat 5 toward the Yucatan later tonight. It is moving to the west-northwest at 16 miles per hour, and the hurricane hunters have found, again, a dropping pressure, and it's been undergoing rapid intensification. You see wind speeds possibly up to 130. If that's the case, then that could be, it could be trying to take an aim at a Cat 4, which it is forecast to be as it makes landfall, possibly with max sustained winds of 140 miles per hour with higher wind gusts, again near Cozumel and Cancun late tonight or early Wednesday morning. After that, it's forecast to move into the southern Gulf of Mexico. Due to some land interaction, it likely will weaken a little bit, so that would put it in the southern Gulf as a Cat 3 hurricane. We'll have to see how much land interaction actually occurs. So that's going to be one thing we're going to watch within the next 24 hours. And then it's going to make its northwesterly trend toward the central Gulf of Mexico before eventually starting to turn to the northwest. Now, I'm going to stop it right here, and so bear with me. So Thursday morning around 7 o'clock, it's forecast to have max sustained winds of 125 miles per hour, making it a strong Cat 3. Then it could re-intensify back into a Cat 4 hurricane in the central Gulf of Mexico. Eventually, it will make that turn to the north. A lot of key factors going on here, but it is going to be in a more favorable environment for some further intensification. Now, with that being said, it is forecast to reach its peak intensity in the central Gulf before it starts to weaken. But I don't want you to let your guard down by any means, because we are going to likely be having a Cat 4, possibly stronger hurricane looking us in the eye, and it's not going to be too far away. As it begins to make that turn toward the north central Gulf, again, likely to start to weaken. Friday, 7 o'clock, expected to be somewhere just basically maybe due south of Vermilion Bay, possibly more to the west, more to the east. And then before it makes landfall, which may occur Friday night into early Saturday morning, the current forecast path brings the center of the storm. Of course, keep in mind the cone represents where the center of the storm could track toward. That's all the way in the upper Texas coast, all the way to near the mouth of the Mississippi River. But the center of the cone includes the Atchafalaya Bay, Vermilion Bay, possibly making landfall right there. And that would be as possibly a weakening Cat 3 hurricane or a Cat 2 hurricane. So I'm going to pause it right here as well, because it is forecast to eventually weaken that into a Cat 1 once it's over land. So once it makes landfall, it will quickly weaken into a Cat 1, you see right there, as of 7 a.m. on Saturday. If it were to take this exact track that you see on your screen, that would bring the most significant impacts to the Baton Rouge metro, because that would bring the eye wall, the center of the storm, over our area. So the greatest impacts would be in south central Louisiana, possibly Acadiana, but it all depends on where it ultimately travels within this cone. And 1/3 of the time, it could even leave that cone of uncertainty. So the cone beyond the forecast track, let me go back a little bit, past Saturday includes Mississippi, it includes Alabama as well. And so, yes, the Florida Panhandle, southwest Alabama, and even parts of Mississippi are in that forecast cone, but that's if it were to track more toward the eastern side of the cone. Areas along the northern Gulf Coast, including Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, will still see some significant impacts in the form of some storm surge, some heavy rain, isolated tornadoes. So again, this is going to bring some pretty significant impacts to areas along the northern Gulf Coast. As of now, looks as though it may be taking a direct hit at Louisiana. So looking at some of the components I was talking about, so there are several things we're going to have to watch for. Some wind shear, it's going to enter a very favorable environment where you're not seeing much in the way of blue. That is a low sheared environment. As it moves toward the northern Gulf Coast, there is going to be some higher wind shear. That's why it is expected to weaken. And not just that, there are some cooler sea surface temperatures. This map showcases temperatures, sea surface temperatures above 80 degrees. Notice along the immediate coastline, we have temperatures in the 70s. So that should work in our favor. And I'll step it back there when I mentioned it should maximize its intensity in the central Gulf before weakening, because again, it is expected to weaken as it encounters some wind shear, perhaps some dry air, and some cooler sea surface temperatures. Now, with that being said, this is telling us that unlike Hurricane Laura, unlike Hurricane Sally, they intensified up until landfall. We may see weakening up until landfall, but I do not want you to let your guard down by any means. We still need to prepare for potentially a Cat 3 hurricane, and I always say prepare for a category higher. So prepare, if we get a Cat 3, prepare for a Cat 4. Always plan on one higher. So walking you through some of the computer models, this is the European model. It's taking more of a westerly track towards southwest Louisiana, and this is Saturday at 7 a.m. Again, this is the European model, just one model run, so that would bring us some significant impacts here in the capital city and in south central Louisiana, with most of the impacts more so in southwest Louisiana. This is also the European model showing possible wind gusts, just some of the models showing a weaker system, but still seeing a good bit of tropical storm force and some hurricane force gusts. As for the GFS goes more toward a central Louisiana landfall, and that would occur Friday night into Saturday, as you see right there. And that would mean some of the most intense winds would be here in the capital city. Let me walk you through some of this. This is the GFS possible wind gust model showing some pretty substantial wind gust across south central and southeast Louisiana. So of course this is all dependent on where it travels ultimately, but the models have been pretty locked in on a southeast or south central Louisiana landfall. You see a few outliers going more toward the east, but a lot of the models are pretty much locked in, again, near Morgan City, maybe Vermilion Bay, Atchafalaya Bay, bringing possibly the core of the storm through the capital city, or just in general the surrounding area, our viewing area, the VR Proud viewing area. Also, this is another product that the National Hurricane Center issues, and this just shows you what the most likely time of tropical storm force winds will likely arrive. So again, the most likely time and the percentage, or the probability. And the most likely time of arrival of tropical storm force winds could see some of those at most likely Friday night, and then near the coast maybe midday Friday, but as early as Friday morning we could start to see some tropical storm force winds. And here's to break it down for you, here's some of the probabilities. Again, this is through Saturday, some of the tropical storm wind probabilities showing a pretty high percentage of around, not sure why that cut out, but anywhere from 80 to possibly 90%. This is taking into account the current track of the storm. So this is showing possibly 4 to 5 inches of rainfall with locally higher amounts. Of course, the highest totals will be near and east of the center of where the storm moves ashore. So we're also looking at the potential for some heavy rain and isolated flash flooding. So to kind of wrap things up, wind, surge, heavy rain, we need to prepare for that all across Louisiana. We'll be able to fine-tune the details, the magnitude of these potential impacts once we have a better feel of where it could be heading. But as I mentioned, the models have been very consistent with showing a landfall in Louisiana. We just have to see, well, is it going to move more toward the west? If it moves more toward the west, towards, say, for example, Acadiana, possibly or even closer towards southwest Louisiana, we would still feel impacts here. And even if it made landfall, say, near Abbeville and near the south central coast of Louisiana, we would get some significant impacts here in the capital city. Again, it's too early to tell those exact specific impacts, the magnitude of wind, but we could start to see tropical storm force winds, as I mentioned, Friday, sometime Friday, maybe Friday night, depending on the time of arrival, Friday evening, and then possibly some hurricane force winds late Friday night into Saturday. So again, that's all dependent on where it tracks ultimately. But the timing of impacts, we could possibly start to see some outer rain bands, if you will, late Thursday. Winds will likely pick up through the day Thursday, but the bulk of it, the brunt of some impacts that we could see, would likely come into play Friday night, and especially Friday night and into early Saturday. That's as of the current update. Of course, if it speeds up, slows down, anything like that, the timing could certainly change. So also, the National Weather Service says that they may issue watches possibly tomorrow morning. May see that late tonight or tomorrow morning. So be on the lookout for that. We could see some tropical storm watches, hurricane watches, which means that those conditions are going to be possible. Hurricane or tropical storm conditions will be possible within the 48 hours of when it's been issued. That would include storm surge as well. So while the weather is quiet, you want to plan and prepare now. And that's for the upper Texas coast all the way to the Florida Panhandle. So if you have friends and family that were impacted by Laura or Sally in the Florida Panhandle in southwest Alabama, tell them to prepare too, because they could still see coastal flooding, still see some wind, heavy rain, isolated tornadoes. That's on the current track. Let me get the track back up so you can see what I'm talking about. Just to show you guys what, give me 1 second. Have to scroll through all of the graphics that I have up on my screen right now. And believe me, it's a mess. This is showing the latest, oh, that's not the one I want to show. Sorry about that. This one, I have about 3 different of these models to show you guys. Here we go. This is the one I wanted to show you. So this just shows you, again, possibly or making landfall near the Yucatan as a Cat 4 hurricane, maybe stronger, and then eventually moving over the Gulf waters, very warm Gulf waters, very conducive, ripe environment for some further intensification. Should reach its peak intensity in the Gulf sometime Thursday in the central Gulf before it begins its weakening phase, but even then we may be looking at a Cat 2 or Cat 3 hurricane at landfall sometime Friday night into early Saturday. Notice this big gap in time. It is forecast to move pretty quickly. This is between 72 and about 90 hours or so. So that is showing that big gap when we would see landfall, and that could potentially bring a direct hit into the capital city. So again, something we're going to have to monitor. No need to be scared, just prepare for a category higher than forecast. We'll be able to fine-tune the details once we get to know more. We're going to have to see how much land it interacts with the Yucatan tonight, see if it spends more time on land, if it slows down, speeds up, or all of that, and then we'll be able to fine-tune those exact storm surge values that we could see, how many feet of storm surge we can see, with the greatest surge being near and east of the center, of course. But that's likely going to be what we're looking at. Some damaging winds. The extent, again, unknown at this time. Heavy rain, could see some flash flooding, coastal flooding from storm surge, and depending on where it travels, if it travels more toward the western side of this cone, then we could be looking at the threat for tornadoes. Now, if it moves more to the eastern side of this cone, our impacts would be significantly less. So again, we're going to be watching this and keeping you guys posted. I'm going to show you the 7-day just so you know when we could potentially start to see some rain. So today, only a slight chance for a few coastal showers, mainly south and east of the capital city. 20% chance for rain tomorrow. Winds will likely start to pick up. It will be breezy on Thursday, maybe even borderline windy. And then winds will likely pick up around the area Friday. Possible Delta impacts. The greatest impacts would likely be Friday night and into early Saturday morning. But then after this is all said and done, then our weather is going to be nicer, and we may even have a cold front move in next week. So go ahead, download the free BR Proud app to stay ahead of the game so you can get the latest on Hurricane Delta, again, which is now a major Cat 3 hurricane. You can get any alerts that we have if we are put under a hurricane watch or a tropical storm watch, or when those turn into warnings, you will get that push notification to your phone. You can get updates. You can check out the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and you can go on our free BR Proud app again, and brproud.com at the top. You'll see the latest information. So if you are just joining us on the stream, or you see this later, you can go and find the latest on our web page, because that's where we'll keep the latest updated. Of course, we have another update from the National Hurricane Center, an intermediate advisory at 1 o'clock this afternoon. They won't issue a new track again until 4 o'clock this afternoon, unless something major changes, and then another track at 10 p.m. So we'll have the latest. Chief Meteorologist Jesse Gunkel will be here, and the meteorologist Jasmine Lomax will also be here this afternoon, keeping you up to date. So again, no need to panic. Just be sure you are prepared. Take those Halloween decorations down. I put them up. I know I need to take them down ahead of this as well. Because not just that, depending on where it tracks, but we'll still be dealing with some windy conditions. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter. You can email me at averuez@brproud.com for the latest. So we're going to wrap things up again, brproud.com and on the free BR Proud app. Take care, guys.